Hello and welcome to the Japanese Drift Master demo. Now in this video we're going to be walking through some of the initial experiences that I had playing this demo, and we're going to also talk about some of my initial impressions. And so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, because this is a demo, you really only have two cars to choose from, an AE86 and a Silvia S15. Obviously, they are not, they don't go by those names for copyright reasons, I'm sure, but you do get a lot of in-depth customization and tuning that we will see throughout the video. Now, we don't go fully in-depth on the customization and the tuning because I wanted to kind of walk through a little bit of it fairly quickly so then we could get into the actual gameplay, because once you get into the actual gameplay, the game world is actually really, really pretty, and not only a great world to drift in, but it's also kind of fun to just drive around in general. But again, if you like having a lot of variety and a lot of options in terms of tuning and overall customization, this game is definitely shaping up to be a really good contender in the world of open world drifting games. Now, let's go ahead and dive right in to the actual Freeroam. And the first thing I did upon jumping into the game was swapping out the automatic gearbox for a manual gearbox, because I just didn't really want to play an open world drift game with an automatic gearbox. I'm sure some of y'all can understand why I decided to go for that. Now, they walk you through a little bit of a tutorial here, and then they sort of just let you go. I accidentally went back into the home space. It's one of those things where it's actually really easy to hit the A button by accident, and I was thinking I was going to shift up, which in all reality, I was not going to shift back up. I was just going to go back into the building. But I would say overall, the controls are pretty simple. It is X to shift down, B to shift up, and Y to handbrake, and then everything else is pretty much standard kind of Xbox controller fare in terms of racing games. I mean, you have your gas, your brake, and then as far as just being able to use the handbrake whenever you want, you can literally just be going down the road at almost any speed and pull it. Now, going through the views, I was really impressed with the amount of views that this game had, especially when it came to the fact that it has an interior view with the wheel visible, and then also an interior view without the wheel visible in case you're playing on a wheel or a simulator setup where you don't want to see the in-game wheel actually turning. And while they did go ahead and automatically set a sort of destination for us, we may or may not have ignored that for the initial drive because, well, I found a customization shop on the way, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna have to stop and see what we can do to this car, because the customization, again, like I said before, I know we've only just seen the tuning so far, but the car customization itself is really, really in-depth, and because I was doing sort of an initial look at this game, I didn't want to spend too long in the customization, but I definitely want to know if y'all would like to see more of the customization, and if you do, we'll come back here and do a much deeper dive. Now, this is the tuner shop, and I love the style of the game world. The style of this game world is absolutely beautiful. Also, look at some of the cars in the background. We've got a Miata, we've got, well, an NA Miata, we've got a Mark V Supra, we've got what looks like a S14, and then we've got something else under a cover on the lift, and then we've got another car over to the far right that is just barely out of frame. So if anybody thinks they can make out what that is, let me know in the comments down below. Now, for this car, there are a bunch of different options, and we're going to actually start with the Rocket Bunny wide body kit. Now, if you want to just throw a body kit on your car and go, you can absolutely do that. But if you also want to go through and do all of the individual options yourself, like the front fenders, the rear fenders, the front bumper, the rear bumper, the hood, the headlights, the taillights, the wing, all of that can be adjusted separately if that's more your style or more your speed. Some parts, like for example this Voltex style wing, do require that the wide body be removed, but I wasn't really feeling the stock body style, and so I wanted to go ahead and throw the wide body back on. And then, of course, once we had the wide body kit back on, I went ahead and selected some wheels that actually, well, fit and weren't, a mile up underneath the body. But again, once we got the correct fitting wheels on the car, it looked 10 million times better, as I'm sure you can obviously tell. Now, this is where I tried to fit the other wing, and the game said, you can't do that. You're not allowed. And I was like, but why? And it was like, well, too bad. You're going to have to live with that ducktail. And I'm like, I don't dislike the ducktail, but at the same time, I kind of wanted the other wing. You know, it's fine. And then I crashed coming out of the garage. So don't worry about it. It's A-okay. Now, setting off outside the garage, this was kind of my first time looking around the world, and I gotta admit, I may or may not have hit a chimney. Don't go ripping down these roads unless you're prepared to avoid oncoming chimneys. Because if you're not prepared to avoid oncoming chimneys, you're gonna find yourself having a hard time. Like that. Now, there are some areas on this map where you can kind of tell that obviously the map is made to be expanded upon later on down the road, and the fact that it is currently a demo build is fairly apparent, although looking at the actual visual quality of this map, I can't wait to see more of it. Now, hilariously enough, I was actually able to find the drift school that they were going to send me to earlier without needing to use the GPS to get to it because, well, I just kind of kept going. Now, you have a bunch of different lessons that you can do, or you can just free ride around the school track, which is what I decided to do. And I'll tell you something, my first little while out here, it was rough. It was pretty dang rough. But I still wanted to show that to y'all because I think it conveys that element of learning the physics right out of the box, learning how everything feels, and, you know, it's like you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, and it's not going to look anywhere near perfect right when you get your hands on the game. You have to not only dial in the car and dial in the setup, but you kind of have to also dial in yourself. Because if you don't dial in yourself, it doesn't really matter how good the car is. So with that as our sort of baseline, I noticed that this game rewards high commitment. This game rewards throwing the car in with a lot of momentum, a lot of angle. Although I did notice there were a couple of scenarios where it would do this odd thing where between transitions, if I pulled the handbrake at the wrong time, it would kind of freeze the car in a straight line. And I'm really not sure why it would do that. If anybody else that has played this game has had that happen, let me know in the comments below, because I was noticing it happen more often than not. Now, one of the things that I do like about the way this game feels is the car feels like it has a lot of genuine weight and mass to it. It doesn't feel like a lot of the other drift games out there where everything feels like it weighs 2 pounds, because a lot of drift games tend to do this thing where, for whatever reason, maybe it's to make the games approachable, maybe it's to make the games more, like, I don't know, casually centered. But regardless of whatever that reason is, I find that so many drift games, or so many kind of drift-centric games out there, feel like you're sliding a 10-pound toy car along in like an ice table or something. It just, everything feels so incredibly slick that it kind of detracts from the experience a little bit, whereas this feels gripped up. The cars feel solid, they feel heavy, they feel like you're actually throwing something around that has genuine weight and genuine mass. And around this power level, you have to be really conscious of what gear you're in, because you can grip up. You can get into a situation where the car is just like, I don't have enough power to keep this slide going, or you didn't give me enough entry momentum, or you didn't pull the handbrake at the wrong time. And it, once again, forces you as a driver or as a player to focus in on when you're actually going to make these maneuvers, when you're going to pull the handbrake, how much throttle you're going to need, how much speed you're going to need to actually commit to the corner. And I am nowhere near the level that I would like to be in this game yet, but I definitely want to keep practicing, because I think it'll be very much so worth it in the long run, because it is a really rewarding physics system. Now, let me know in the comments down below if this is a game that you would like to check out at some point in the future. And if you are interested and maybe have played it before, let me know your thoughts and impressions on the game world, the physics system, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Do you think this game has a bright future in the community? Do you think it's maybe just going to be here and then gone? Or do you think it's going to stay around a long time and maybe stand up to giants of the genre like CarX, for example? My only issue with CarX is I've never been the biggest fan of how light the cars feel. I know that that's kind of a personal preference type thing, but it is a personal preference nonetheless. And so with that being said, it's definitely, this game definitely has its work cut out for it entering a genre like this. But I think especially with the world in the game that is stylized the way it is, I think this game has a really bright future. But hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see y'all next time.